Beneath the calm, turquoise waters off the coast of Laconia, an entire city sleeps in liquid silence. It is not a myth, nor a legend distorted by centuries of retelling. Resting just a few meters below the surface lies Pavlopetri, the oldest known submerged city on the European continent. But to truly stand before its gates, you must leave the world of air and light behind. The first glimpse is often a shock of pure disorienting wonder. Stone foundations emerge from the sandy seabed like exposed bones of a forgotten giant. These are not scattered shipwrecks or solitary pillars. This is a complete, coherent urban plan. Over 5,000 years of human striving and catastrophe are engraved into every algae-covered rock. The still waters hide a secret that forces us to reconsider the fragility of civilization itself. For decades, this lost city's existence shattered the comfortable narrative of Mediterranean prehistory. It proved that complex, organized societies flourished here long before the golden age of classical Greece. The discovery was not a dramatic excavation, but a quiet moment of observation by a British oceanographer in 1967. Nicholas Fleming was flying over the coastal shallows when he noticed unnatural geometrical patterns bleeding through the blue. What he first mistook for an optical illusion turned out to be a perfectly preserved grid of walls and doorways. To dive there today is to drift over avenues that have not felt a human footstep in 30 centuries. The water distorts distance and scale, making a simple courtyard feel like a vast drowned plaza. You can make out thresholds, interior walls, and even the subtle rises of what some archaeologists believe were second floors. The city's layout defies the chaos we often associate with distant antiquity. Pavlopetri was a meticulously planned settlement, predating urban centers like Mycenae and Athens by a staggering margin. Radiocarbon dating of artifacts places its birth around 2,800 years before the Common Era. From the early Bronze Age, the city grew, adapting and rebuilding upon its own scars for roughly 2 millennia. Ceramic shards embedded in the sediment chart the evolution from simple hand-molded vessels to ornate painted Mycenaean wares. It was a thriving port, a maritime link in a web of trade that stretched across the wine-dark sea. Yet, around 1000 BCE, at the twilight of the Greek Bronze Age, the bustling rhythm of this place fell silent forever. The city wasn't violently destroyed by fire or sword, as so many other contemporary sites were. Instead, it appears to have simply sunk beneath the waves, abandoned in the face of an unstoppable, creeping terror. The evidence suggests a slow, grinding catastrophe rather than a single apocalyptic day. When you swim through the central street, you are retreating on the path of a mass evacuation you can almost feel in the water. The sea, which had once been the source of its prosperity, slowly swallowed the very ground beneath its feet. This brings us into the labyrinth of the mystery. What force could erase an entire city so completely from the land of the living? Geologists who have studied the tectonic membranes of this region point to a series of ancient violent seizures. The Peloponnese is a restless land, and the junction of the African and Eurasian plates lies frighteningly close. A series of powerful earthquakes could have liquefied the sandy coastal soil, triggering a process called soil subsidence. Imagine the ground stabilizing just long enough for the terrified survivors to rebuild, only to shudder and drop a meter deeper with the next decade's tremor. This is a war against geology that no Bronze Age wall could possibly withstand. Simultaneously, the slow climatic warming that ended the last ice age continued to melt ancient glaciers. Global sea levels rose to reclaim the low-lying plains, swallowing the city inch by invisible inch. However, attributing the disappearance solely to natural disaster tells only half the ghost story. Some researchers look to the horizon of history and see a darker, more complex human narrative. The end of the Bronze Age was a period of total societal collapse across the Eastern Mediterranean. Palace economies burned, literacy vanished, and the so-called sea peoples swept through the lands. Perhaps Pavlopetri was not just a victim of shaking earth and rising tides, but also of a collapsing global network. If the trading ships stopped coming, if the political order that guaranteed safety disintegrated, a drowning city would become a death trap. Local whispers among the older divers speak of a different kind of weight pressing down on the ruins. They talk about a psychological threshold you cross when you leave the sun-warmed surface and enter the cold, greenish gloom of the ancient avenues. Down there, the sound of your own breathing becomes a metronome, marking the distance between your world and their world. The evidence paints a picture of a people who tried desperately to cling to their sinking home. Archaeologists have found signs of crude, last-ditch repairs on walls that were already half submerged. They packed stones against sinking foundations in a futile gesture of defiance against the ocean. You have to ask yourself, at what point did the last inhabitant look up from their futile labor and decide the gods had abandoned this ground? Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Pavlopetri is what it never became. Unlike Pompeii, which was famously frozen in a moment of volcanic fury, Pavlopetri was not sealed by a protective layer of ash. It was a slow, wet extinction, a fading away where the sea methodically erased the organic memory of the place. What remains is the skeleton, the hard limestone geometry stripped of its flesh. The human obsession with this sunken puzzle has only deepened in the modern era. In 2009, a multidisciplinary team of archaeologists and digital surveyors returned to map the city with unprecedented precision. They deployed laser scanners and high-definition sonar to strip away the water, revealing Pavlopetri in artificial daylight. The resulting digital models are breathtakingly precise, showing over 9,000 square meters of flooded ruins. For the first time, we could almost walk through the city's markets and courtyards without getting wet. Yet, this digital resurrection created a paradox. The clearer the city becomes, the more poignant its silence seems. We now possess the ghost blueprint of a society that time forgot, a high-resolution map of an absence. The digital stone walls cradle empty water where laughter and commerce once echoed. Standing virtually in the central square, you feel the uncanny valley of history tugging at your mind. They reported the unnerving sensation of being watched, not by creatures of the sea, but by the architecture itself. Every doorway is an empty eye socket peering back into a past we can only illuminate with educated guesswork. The search for answers has not been without its burdens for the living. Modern threats now endanger the ruins more rapidly than the previous 3,000 years of silence. Boats dragging anchors, pollution from nearby development, and the careless flipper of a poorly trained tourist scrape away at the sunken history. There is a frantic race to document the site before the same modernity that uncovered it finishes it off. This brings us to a raw philosophical threshold that all such mysteries inevitably cross. We dive into the abyss of the past, looking for answers, but we often surface holding only a mirror. Pavlopetri whispers a warning that is entirely relevant to our own era of rising sea levels and shifting continents. Here was a community that stood for 2,000 years, a testament to stability, erased by a change of just a few crucial meters of water. We tell ourselves that time reveals all things, But there is no final revelation hidden in these stones. The sea is a keeper of secrets, a liquid archive that refuses to allow a definitive final chapter. As you float above the foundations, you are not a discoverer, but a visitor in a space where history is still actively decaying. The sand shifts, the walls crumble, and every passing season buries a piece of the puzzle deeper into the sediment. Perhaps the most haunting suggestion proposed by archaeologists is that Pavlopetri was not unique. How many other coastal cities, lush and powerful centers of the early world, are now indistinguishable humps of coral far out on the continental shelf? The Mediterranean is a vast blue carpet hiding countless lost worlds in its folds. Pavlopetri is merely the one we can almost touch, the one that kisses the surface and allows us a fleeting glimpse. The enigma endures because it challenges our hubris, our assumption that advanced civilization is a modern gift. It reminds us that complexity can vanish, that a network of trade and culture can be unwoven by a vibration in the Earth's crust. To trace the sunken street with your gaze is to feel the immense weight of geological time pressing against the thin shell of human memory. The clockwork of the planet grinds slowly, but when it moves, all the sand castles of kings collapse equally. We are left staring into the turquoise abyss, suspended between the stars of our technological future and the drowned order of our ancestors. And still, the ruins refuse to answer the simplest of human questions. Who were you? We know their floor plans and their pottery, but we will never hear the sound of their voices or the names they gave to their children. That is the cruel boundary of underwater archaeology. It preserves the city, but dissolves the soul. Some nights, when the sea is flat and the moon cuts a silver path to the horizon, fishermen claim to see a silhouette beneath the stern of their boat. It is not a threat, just a reminder, a geometric whisper of a street grid that still catches the light. This is the eternal fade, the slow disappearance of a civilization into myth, a process we are privileged to witness in real time. Pavlopetri is not a puzzle to be solved, but a poem to be contemplated in the cold, quiet glow of the deep. It asks us to hold our breath, to listen to the echo of a city that trusted the ground beneath its feet.